Say some empires will collapse, but let's start with the first one, with the Orange Empire having a lot of revolts. But this area, below here and over here, being full of rebellion. And well, with these groups who want to rebel all joining up. And they start in some areas. And they quickly overwhelm the defense forces of this nation. Well, and even in the puppets they rise up. And then eventually the puppets declare their joining of this rebellion against their boss, basically. With them pushing back against the rebels. But it did nothing, basically. With the capital of this nation being under threat. As I move up, yeah, I'll be over here. And while it falls, and this nation's forced to negotiate with the rebels. So let's see how it goes. And well, now for the peace treaty. To expand due to weakness, a lot of stuff happens in this empire. With rebels in some of the territories, especially to the north and south. Like over here, a rebellion starts over here. Over here. And their goal is to overthrow this kingdom, basically. And bring back control to areas that are lacking it. With these rebels being very successful. As they cut off some lands and take it. Although they do suffer a series of defeat over here. And over here, this eventually leads to these two areas connecting again. But the rebels launch an offensive to the coast, which they seize a lot of it. With this area surrendering. With that nation over there, although it's overly extended into multiple areas that probably won't get along in it, they decide to leave. And this area encircles and takes the capital of this nation. So let's see what happens. And this nation lasts a while, but as they start giving more control to smaller areas, this starts leading to, well, countries not wanting to be a part of this. So, well, it leads to the beginning of the collapse. There. But this nation gets its own one. But with declarations of independence. With this area here, declaring independence. And then, taking advantage of this situation, this empire launches an offensive down the coasts. And quickly, they seize this land. Well, the nation that was here had that color, but like probably that dark, maybe. And well, that's all the collapses we'll see. Well, with many nations being weakened. Except this nation's planning on taking advantage of the situation it has at hand. And well, this nation here, the Green Empire, decides to continue its expansion. As they expand across this coast. And they do this, and they land over here, and by taking this, they take the majority of the population. And so they use this to advance south. And well, this happens, and well, at this point, this nation's forced into surrender. Well, they launch an offensive here, and up here, taking most of the coast. This area has more people living everywhere. And well, eventually it's forced to surrender. with this nation expanding prey fire. And then a nation with interest in two areas, securing trade routes, and their other interest is gaining land. They launch an offensive. Their goal is to gain advantageous positions. Although the nation to the south does put up a bit of a fight. And then they finally advance to here, with this area pretty much crumbling. And then they decide to launch an offensive over here. And the Green Nation to take back what they... This nation wasn't green, but that nation decides it's time to take back what's theirs. Even though they have a few nations to go up against. And while in that area there, an independence declaration is made. Well, this nation crumbles. Well, let's see how the peace treaty goes. Rising between two nations still. Over this land here. And it doesn't start yet. As this nation does this, and this, it leads to a lot of tensions. With the border to the nation to the east of them deciding to mobilize, believing war is inevitable. So this nation is shocked by it, but this nation quickly comes into support of that nation. And well, war has become inevitable there. Stay tuned for the next video to see what happens with this conflict. Does it resolve or does it fall apart? And over here, there'll be some stuff happening. So stay tuned for the next video. Wild Mapper out, and non-delay subscribe. Bye.